Welcome back to the channel. My name is John. I'm recording and mixing engineer based out of South Wales in Cardiff. I've worked at Leaders Vale Studios in Abervale, which I've been working out of for the last 5 years, and I worked in-house for a while at Rockfield Studios as well. Today I want to talk about the SSL UF8. The reason being is I've had this now for about a month, and rather than just doing like an unboxing, because I kind of already done that, I want to just talk about like how I've been using it, how I've had it set up, and my kind of impressions after using it for now for about best part of 2 months. So it's going to be a bit of a deep dive. Hopefully this will find it interesting, and we're going to start right now. So the first thing to really talk about with the UF8, this is SSL's new motor. This is a control service from solid state logic. There are no audio elements to it. You can't record with it. There's no mic preamps or anything. It is purely just a control surface for your DAW. At the present time, let's just have a quick look at the 360 app. There currently is support for Pro Tools. You've got Logic, Cubase, Ableton Live, and Studio One. As far as I'm aware, there is a generic MCU profile as well, which stands for Mackie Control Universal, which is like the controller that came out like 10, 15 years ago. I think the UF8 has come about from feedback, I guess, from users from their previous control surface called the Nucleus. The biggest issue with the Nucleus, I think, was it was a 16-channel control surface, and it also included 2 mic preamps. First version had a USB sound card built in. One of the problems that like SSL ran into is that the people who actually made the drivers for the Nucleus, I think it was only on Mac. It was only supported up until like a certain operating system. They did run into a couple of issues where obviously that they couldn't update the drivers anymore on the Mac side of things. So it almost became like a unit that wasn't quite for everyone. It was a bit too expensive. It was a bit big. But saying that, I think it's looking at the Audio Animals guys. They've actually did a demo of it from I think it's Studio Care or Studio Exchange, and obviously it's actually a 16-channel unit of the UF8. 2 of those is actually a lot wider than the Nucleus. So one of the things, obviously, like they had the built-in sound card and the preamps, and like the solid-state Logic preamps, I'm a massive fan of. I've got 4 VHD mic pre's over in the corner. I love them on toms and guitars. Wouldn't say no to having 2 more, but it wasn't something that I really needed. And so then I'd be basically paying, I think it was like £3,000 brand new, and then £5,000 when I went to Nucleus 2 to have a sound card that I wasn't going to use and 2 mic pre's, which were great, but I was only looking really for a control surface. One of the things that they have kept with the UF8 is they've actually included the Softkeys, which you might be able to see. I'm just going to go quickly show you the Softkeys. So we've got this little section here like Softkeys. The VPOT's kind of like the default settings, and then we got like another section which will use the profile setups. These can all be set up like shortcuts and so on and so forth. So like with the UF8, we've got basically it's almost kind of set out into main center section and control sections around the side. So they've tried to kind of design it to kind of accommodate Pro Tools, Logic, Cubase, and all of them have their own like different ways of working. It takes a bit of time to get used to, and you probably need I took a day just to set myself up for this to help me work faster. When you come up with Pro Tools or Logic, there are like default settings that they thought up and they thought would probably be useful, but you're going to get more out of this if you sit down, work out your own shortcuts, because how I use this might be different to other people. When we're looking at competitors, the main obvious competitors from Avid, like the S1, the S3, much smaller. I think they're much smaller profile, but they also have the additional option for the iPad like metering app that can go on top of the units. I kind of was in between two paths for that, and I ended up going with the SSL, partly because I thought that there'd probably be a bit more integration with the Sigma. And I actually think that'll still happen. It's not currently that. So for anyone who doesn't know, Sigma is SSL's 2-unit rack unit, which is like a summing mixer with automation controls, kind of like you might see on the AWS and Duality. And I thought hopefully at some point there would be a layer, like another layer set up for Sigma, so I could just kind of flip the layer and then I could control Sigma straight from here, rather than having to worry about like kind of opening up the plugin. It'd be something that I'd love to see in the future. It's not quite there yet, but with the 360 software, I'm hoping at some point we'll see that. So let's have a look at the layout first of all. We have in the top left corner, we've got like this section here which has layers. The layer actually corresponds to the different DAW controls. So I've got layer 1, which is for my setup for Pro Tools. Layer 2 is actually for Logic, and at the moment when I'm recording, I'm doing demonstrations and stuff. You can kind of see on the screen now I've got the 360, I've got Pro Tools, I've got OBS for screen capture, and I've got Logic now, which is actually just using for recording my voice. So if we look at the mixer on here, if I move this fader up and down, you can kind of see that it's already been set up. SSL did some really good videos about how to set those up, and I'll put a link up in the corner. There'll be a link for setting that up. So as I said, these are like the layers. So I've got a Pro Tools layer, And then obviously, and then Logic Layer, I can have a third one set up if I needed it. The next section here is the quick 3 common shortcuts. So this is like my Pro Tools session. Like one actually just does does the mixer, just like kind of toggles between the two. I don't really use that button that much because I'm actually just quick at just pressing Command equals just right in front of me on the keyboard. And that just kind of works just the same. Next thing I have is Beat Detective on 2. I use that quite a lot. So that's Command and 8 on the numpad. And that's for when I'm looking at drum editing. And then 3 is strip silence. So I've actually set that up. 2 and 3 I use those 2 all the time. You can set these buttons any way that you want in the session into the SSL 360 button, which brings me nicely along to 360. So when you set up the UF8 and you install it, all the drivers come up. The unit actually comes up, and this is like the first screen that you'll see. And if you click on the mixer, the buttons come up saying SSL UF8. So if you've got multiple units, you can actually identify which one it is by just go onto this homepage and click on it. There's obviously been an update since I bought this. They've come out with the UC1, which is like the control sort of like a center section for like their channel EQ and compressors. And that would be something that I'd probably potentially look at in the future. I quite like how it looks. But with console 1, which I've got down here as well, the main thing that I'm kind of going between the two is I've got a workflow that kind of works for me, so I'm not really any too much of a rush to grab that. It'd be interested to see, how does it sound? I do quite like how the visual feedback with the buttons and stuff looks, like the channel strips. I wouldn't mind comparing it to the bus compressor I got over here. What I really wanted to show was kind of these layers now. So one of the things that we have with the UF8 is that we've got these soft keys and the quick keys. So these sections up here, the quick keys 1, 2, and 3 come to here, and you can actually set up whatever you want with these buttons. So we just have a quick look. I'm just going to bring the camera back on again. So what we have, if we look at this now, I got layer 1, and we've got shift option. It actually shows you on the screen. We've got the shortcuts. So shift option now is a battery name. I'm using that quite a lot, especially for when it comes to mixing, exporting tracks out, especially on the mixing sessions. I record my mixes back into Pro Tools at the bottom of the session. And I'll normally, if I do a new playlist, and then I might go battery name, I'll press that and it comes up with the options that I'd want to do. And I can press enter and it's escape. So I haven't really changed too much of the first layer. Stop playing record were definitely ones that were from Pro Tools, but from solid state logic setup. And I've also included on this one option command and F in Pro Tools. If I just do that, option command F is scroll to track. Now, scroll to track is a really useful thing, and it's something that I've actually used quite a lot with working with Sigma. On here, I've got Sigma channel. If I just press that, it'll actually take me to the Sigma control. And what I tend to do here is I'd normally go plugin, select, and 3. And that actually brings up the SSL Sigma control for the monitor controller, because I'm actually using the Sigma monitor controller. And then if I wanted to then as well, the other thing I could do is I could press VPOT. And then I've actually got the controls on top here. So I've got cut, dim. You actually might have heard the clicking of the Sigma as well. So I've actually got the cut, dim, and I can kind of scroll through, and there's another page here. I can page across as well. So then we've got other, so it's I think this goes on to headphones and everything as well. So that's something that I'm using quite a bit. It makes my session organization a lot easier. So that's probably one of the first things I did is I have that channel. It's kind of like a default and a template, and I've got my other channels to the Sigma set up on here as well. Basically, if I wanted to, I could just press plugin, select, and if I could press 1, it'll open up channel 1. So it opens up the plugins as I want it, and I kind of actually expanded on that a little bit more. Take plugin back off and just go back to normal. On the second layer of the soft keys, I'll just go over here now. One of the things that I came up with the soft keys is what are the tracks and channels that I'm using quite a lot of? What am I going to quite often? And again, option command and F. And then with Pro Tools and sessions and stuff, now what I've done is I've got scroll to tracks, and I've got everything set up in folders. So one of the things that I've done is I've got a VCA folder, and so that means that once I've got the mixes and stuff, these help me kind of control the levels as I'm going along if I want to do a fade out. But this kind of gives me a bit more control, and it lets me kind of see where I'm at. If I want to go to drums, that's obviously there. I could go guitars, and that actually brings me to focus there, and vocals as well. So then I've kind of on that. Vocals folders coming closed, so I press Shift F, that opens it up. I've actually got, on a different layer, I've got folder toggle, and I've got some, quick look. I've got folder toggle, root to folder, and zoom all, which I use quite a lot. So again, it's like there's different layers and stuff. And normally, like just session location, I'm on 2, and if I'm doing like session admin and stuff, that's normally on layer 3, which you can kind of see there. This folder I find really, really useful because, like, obviously with sessions and stuff, they can get really, really big. And it was one of the things, I was doing a mixing session somewhere else. I think they're on like an earlier version of Pro Tools, which didn't have folders. And as sessions get bigger, you can get up in hundreds to hundreds of channels of tracks. So it just makes things a little bit easier that I can, rather than having to like kind of scroll through and try and find stuff, I just go, right, I want to go guitar folder, and it takes me straight there. And then it also comes up with the folders, channels, and the information on Pro Tools in here. One of the things, actually, what I started doing is, with the limitations of Huey, and this is down to Avid, not SSL, Huey limits the control surface information to forced characters on your control surface. So that's what I started trying to do is all folder tracks now, whenever possible, or major channels that I have, I always have them named the same thing. So I have guitars always in equals guitars, vocals will always be in equal vocal, which is kind of see on the screen there. And if I go to the bass channels, I haven't set the bass up correctly because it's not scored up properly. So bass just be equals bass. Have we got space in there or something? Let's try that one. Base folder. Yeah, it's meant to be space, that's a mistake. Wicked. But that actually lets me then like kind of select it. And then if I wanted to, I've got this option here, like folder toggle, which lets me open and close folders on here. And I've also, on layer 3, I've got a couple other bits and pieces set up as well, which I've already mentioned previously. So I've got folder toggle, which is open and close the folders, which is just Shift F. The other thing that I could possibly do is, say I was setting up some new tracks. So say I was going to do 3 new tracks for another bass overdub, because all basses need double tracking and solos and everything. What I could do is I could have those selected automatically, and they come up here. If I press root to folder and I go new bass, I'm going to make this a routing folder, stereo, and make it mono. That just means that I can kind of set that up and it all moves in. One of the things I did look at doing, this is down to Pro Tools rather than like the UF8 and stuff. What I wanted to do is like I wanted to toggle between a routing folder or a basic folder, because sometimes I want stuff that goes to it. Other times I think for drums, nothing ever goes to it. That's one of the things I wanted. What I was looking at trying to do is like, I want to have some channels set up as basic, sometimes set up as folders. But with routing to folder, what happens when you press the button is it opens up and it goes to the same setting that you had previously. So if I made a new basic folder now and pressed basic, you'll notice now everything gets routed. We've now got this folder which lets me mute it and unmute it. And if I press root to folder again, I know, press the wrong button, folder toggle. If I press root to folder, it comes up as basic. I was looking at setting up, but those things were kind of being made and active, or they weren't quite following correctly. So like if I set up a basic folder and I want to do that again, it might change it to a routing folder. So I want to keep those tracks for a second. So that was one of the things. So that I ended up going just root to folder, and I'll just figure it out from there. Toggle plugins I quite like, because I can just turn all the plugins on and off. Right, so this is a different session now, loads of layers and stuff. So this is actually a really good one that kind of show you what we were kind of doing. Lots of backing vocals, lots of vocals. When it came to actually kind of recording and stuff, when we were going through, it was like pressing stuff up. So I'd say, oh, go to verse 1, go to verse 2, turn around, chorus 1, go verse 2. It's all slightly different, but going through, so I'd go in and actually set the numbering up. I did the numbering in a bit of a weird way. The verses were always in like 11, 12. Choruses then are like 21, 22, and 23. So it was like the other thing then we got obviously is like the VPOT. The VPOT section is actually really quite interesting in terms of, if I went to, let's have a look, let's go to the kick drum. Let's go to the drums. So now we've got the kick drum. If I go into sends, I go 1 and I press flip fends. So now like we're actually controlling the faders on the sends up here. So it just means that like I've got control on the faders. And if you notice as well, like the other section now, all these have lit up. All these buttons here have like for pre-post, so you can actually kind of choose it. And the other thing that you can actually do is if I press VPOT again. So the other thing that we've got with the VPOT when we're not in flip mode is we can actually get we can unmute plugins as well. So that's what we've got here, because I've got the drums are all been grouped. Here we've got pre-post. Now I can go through, if I just change a couple here, they kind of unlight themselves, or they're just kind of dimly lit. So that means they're actually kind of into post-fade. You'd like to put them into pre-fade. They actually flip on the things. If I press VPOT again, I can mute and unmute plugins. Then we've got this section down here on the left-hand side. So if I went to bank 2, I've now got, let's go flip. I've now got, basically I've got sends for plates and stuff. I've got close plate, and then if I can use this scroll bar to actually scroll around the session a little bit. And so then now we've got a couple here for the room, so I can change some of these. And then I'll notice it'll actually change the faders there. So as you can see, like, it's quite nice just to you can kind of go through, and the VPOT will change. I think we can also, yeah, so we can also actually select a channel. We can go to channel mode, and then we can see like the sends and stuff. I can change the values of like one single channel that's been selected. So this one I got my overheads, and I can change B, C. I could probably do D. One thing is it doesn't quite show you what you've got, but I've also got like a pan control. So it's almost like kind of expanding out the sends and the faders and stuff just to Pro Tools, which I quite like. Also, when you see this, you can also see that the colors and stuff change each time to show you, okay, is it muted or is it pre and post, or is it while you're on plugin, are we in channel mode, or are we just in normal mode? The plugins are only about as useful as how well they've been mapped. So if I went onto the parallel drum channel, I got a Pultec EQ, and I've got a 1176. So as I press button 1 and button 2, it lets me switch between the two. And then the controls come up here on the left. So if I turn the input down there as well, and I've got the attack. So it's actually like the UAD stuff's been really, really well mapped. And it's really, really simple to use. I've got two ways of scrolling through. I can use this button here for going through the pages. So page 2 gives me the ratios. I've got a mix control, I've got the meter control things, and I've also got, so sometimes the buttons control kind of come in. It really depends. Like sometimes they work out really, really well. Sometimes they're not quite as good. One of the things that I've really, really liked is sometimes I have like reverb on this. Let's put SSL reverb on. And like the Softkey stuff's been pretty good as well. So if I just go into plugin 3, I got my pre-delay, and it's actually really, really nice just to kind of really quickly just move some stuff around. And then I've also got like anything that comes up, you can kind of see this is a Pro Tools thing that actually shows you what buttons you've got. So it's actually quite nice to be able to like kind of cut through and change bits and pieces. You can't flip plugin control on Pro Tools, and that's a limitation with Huey and not SSL, because in Logic you can do this. I've got my pan. If I want to ever go back, go out of plugin, press pan. I can find pan. Like you can also toggle in the SSL. You can also set it up so it's always find pan. I don't do that. I'm normally just like, I like being quite quick. So if I wanted to like fine tune it a little bit more, I might press down. Next thing, if I went into record, so the other thing now we've got over here, we've got the pan mode. So sometimes if you're in plugin mode or whatever, like normal channel or like sends and stuff, if you want to ever get back to just like a normal channel view, just go press pan. If you cycle through pan as well, you can go left and right so you can see both. Record mode is really useful. So say we're on drums in the moment, and I'm going to put, say I want to record some backing vocals, and for whatever reason there was 2 lots of them. I can use the scroll wheel, and I can just cycle through, and eventually what will happen is the buttons come up as red. It might have been nice. I know there's been a few people saying that like, it'd be nice to have like the record channel indicators or something else that's a bit clearer, or having a record arm button inserted automatically as like another option. I know there's been a couple of people complaining about like where the buttons are placed as well in terms of faders, because you can't quite go across. You can't just like slide your hand across. But it hasn't really bothered me too much. I can kind of record enable different channels now. I can select them, and then that gets updated as well on Pro Tools. I quite like that because I might be working on something and I might end up going, right, I just need to change something in the drums or the VCA. So I'd say I want to turn like the guitars up or something. If I drums up, you can see they all move. And then go, right, I want to go back to the vocals. Okay, where are my vocals? So there we are, there's my backing vocals. So now if I do vocals, I'll go to my BBs folder and it comes back up. With the go to track, if Pro Tools hasn't got it labeled exactly the same, it's not going to find the channel that you're looking for. That's why I always end up doing the equals in, because I can see that's at UF8 control, I always know that's a folder. Initially, I didn't think I was going to use this mode as much, like scrolling around, like navigating the session. I actually quite like doing this, a lot more than actually banking through. And as I said, with this folder section, like I'm actually using this a lot more now. So I'm going to drums, and I might just go, right, okay, I just want to go to corridor and just move around. You can set this up in preferences so it doesn't do this. This will actually kind of follow it. You can turn these on and off in this section here. So it's Pro Tools and then mixing, and that'll come up. One of the things about Pro Tools, which doesn't happen in Logic, is when we come onto the automation mode, which is this section here, you kind of have to hit this button in order for these to light up. If I go back to normal, they've kind of gone. So if I want to automate something, I've got to go into automation mode, select the channels I want, and they'll automatically go to read. But now if I press touch, if you notice, like, trim, off, read, take trim off. Let's go back to read. Let's go to the guitars. So say I want to go on this one, I'm going to go touch, and I think it basically means that like I can kind of touch or latch, and it'll automatically, if I start doing like automation, if I start doing some automation and stuff, like I could slide it up and down. You can see like this is really, really useful for doing that sort of thing. One of the things I saw on Gear Sluts on the thread, there was someone saying, it's like, well, this is like, this is quite expensive. For the same price, you could get a Q16 or something like that. I've got a Q16. The biggest advantage of having this over the Q16 is the only thing you can actually do on the Q16 is the fader levels for the main tracks. You can't go up into the fader. You can't go up into the sends and control that. You can't like change the plugin values and stuff as well. So that's one of the things that we're kind of missing a little bit with the Q16. And the other thing it doesn't have is it doesn't give you a readout of the channels. So like you've got to almost try and remember where you are on the session and what the faders look like in order to kind of remember. And sometimes you can look on the screen, you can kind of see like if there'd be another like 24 channels set up there. I liked it, but it wasn't, at the time, I didn't think that the faders was accurate or was quite as easy to kind of write automation. But having these shortcuts as well makes a massive difference in terms of what I'm looking at it for. So the next section then is this like kind of transport section just here. I've actually been really surprised with how much I've actually used this scrolling feature rather than the banking. I don't really use it too much. The other thing, like the other section we have then is nav, which basically lets you move your scroll head around. Nudge, I don't really tend to use that much because, so nudge at the moment in Pro Tools doesn't appear to be working. Focus is interesting because what it lets you do is it actually turns this into a scroll wheel. So as I change the scroll wheel, you can see like I can use focus to change the controls. So I can just move my mouse over something and actually change it quite easily rather than having to go through and go, okay, I want to go to plug in lead vocals. I'm not even on the right channel. Okay, let's go plug in there, and we're on 2. And I've got the controls here, but sometimes it might just be as easy to use that. What I use focus mode for quite a lot is with the Kemper. I'm just going to load that up and show you. I use it quite a bit because what it means is I've got my Kemper, which is out of the way. With the Kemper, I've got a tendency of kind of going, let's just go clean, let's go my Black Star. And what I'll tend to do with the Kemper is I'll be plugged in, that'll be going out into a cab in the live room. And what will tend to happen is rather than having to like reach over and kind of control it, I've actually got all the control I need and I can just go gain, I go into focus mode in the SSL, and I can dial in the different bits, different settings and stuff. So I can move the mouse, change it for what I need it to. Just being able to do that's been great. Just like I'm using this a lot. Just going like kind of changing the gain on the controls. The final section then that we've got session navigation. So I can go up and down, or I can do zoom. So I think this actually zooms all the tracks. Yeah, this like when you press the button in, it turns into zoom. That like kind of, so you could like if you wanted to, you could zoom in quite a lot. As I said before, I tend to just go zoom all. And then if I want to like change it a little bit more, I might go, okay, let's go up from there. That's like the level I want. And that actually shows me the entire session. Okay, I want to zoom in a little bit more. You could look at doing like setting up the zoom profiles onto here as well if you wanted. So you could go, right, I want to go and fine tune like drum editing or some fades. I want to go and right, zoom preset 5. And then if I take the button off, we've then got track navigation and like tab into transients and stuff as well. So like this is forward and back. Honestly, this section I don't really use in Pro Tools, although I do quite like that. Was it worth the investment? This is subjective. For me, like just having like the folders and stuff and being able to root around and find stuff, I save so much time over the course of a day using that I think it's been worthwhile. I'm getting much quicker with recording and having like the presets. I don't even have to think about them. I was really good on shortcuts in the first place anyway, but this is just like another level that's made it worthwhile for me, and was being able to go, okay, right, I'm into mixing now. I can actually control the volumes and stuff from here, and if I want to change, if I want to like dim the monitors or something, I could then go like plug in, select 3. And I'm going to go on dim already, so that's great. The only thing that comes up in the SSL, and this is SSL, not Huey, for whatever reason, on the Sigma controls, the pan pots or the rotary knobs don't work on them. So I'm generally having to do that. And focus doesn't work on it either. I don't know why. And it's only on the SSL plugin. So if I did the same thing on here, I've got the Sigma control. I got my volumes on 4. Obviously, there's like tons of pages on this Sigma channel, so like I can't control the faders on here, which is not really annoying, but it's a pain, and it's something that I'd like to have seen with UF8. in terms of being able to do that. If you're going to get UF8, I think it's worth spending some time and actually working on your profiles and how you have things set up and working out like a workflow that works for you. I know with console 1 fader you do get, and like if you touch a fader it automatically changes the channels on the console 1. At the moment, if you're in Pro Tools, switch back to here, if you're in Pro Tools you don't have that option as easily. So one of the things I do like though, if I do put console, let's just put console 1 on one channel. In here, there is a section that they actually incorporated but didn't put it on the controller, which is width. You'll actually find it in automation right down the bottom. So there's a width here, and that actually gives you for stereo channels and everything. It actually gives a bit more information. So I just need to go to my drum tracks, and we are on kick drum, aren't we? Select, plug in 2. Now, on here I got my width stereo, so I've actually got control for that, and you can kind of see it going width wide or where it goes mono after a certain point, after a certain frequency. That was something that I didn't have before. The other thing that like Pro Tools of Solid State Logic came out with was the native Channelstrip version 2. So I've done Shift Option and click, and now what I'm doing is I'm loading up Channelstrip, and it's actually really quick. It's really good. So then if I press the 360 button now, if I want to plug-in mixer, once like the plugin's all loaded, I press this again, and now what I've got on 79 channels, I've got a 79 channel SSL 9000s mixer that's been set up. So I've got a bit of control here on the mixer. So if I press here now, what actually happens, if you're noticing, on this I'm on plugin 5. As I'm scrolling through the session, because I've got different channels that are all on plugin 5, every time I select the channel on the UF8, it actually updates the plugin. Something I really wish that the console 1 did. 20, and then that means like if I had the UC1 then. So now if you notice, as I press select on different channels, I've got all the drums on here. So it's actually really good that I've got, okay, I'm in plugin mode, I got the plugin active on the screen, I just press select and it's going to automatically change the channel for me. Let's go over here somewhere. So I've got acoustic 1. I've got some backing vocals. Yeah, my backing vocals are over here, so channel 65. And the other thing that I can do in this, if I press tab, what tab lets me do is actually go into full screen view and look into it in a lot more detail. In one of the settings, when you've got this option in the UF8, and you can see it's actually been highlighted in the light green. If I went to sort of the backing vocal 1, and that's been updated now, so I'm over here. And then if I press plugin 5, it'll actually give me the information for it. So I've got my input. If I just scroll up to the top, it should show where my input is. So you see that I'm actually controlling the input, and I've got bypass on and off. I do bypass, it just turns itself on and off. I've got a phase as well. Page, low cut, high cut. That's really weird that they do the low cut backwards on the controls. And the high pass filter. That one's right, but that one's weird. One of the things about when we're looking at plugins with lots of controls like channel strips, it's you kind of split them up into sections a little bit. So I've got like the bell, I got the controls here, and then we've got the next section will be the low mids. It kind of makes sense in a way, but whereas on like the console 1, I can just literally like, I know that these knobs here are for EQ, this is my gate and compressor, drive and stuff. So it's always the same knob. I'm always more or less the same controls for each plugin. So it's a lot quicker to kind of run through rather than having to scroll through menus like this. But this view, or this view, whichever one you want to look at, this wasn't designed for the UF8. This was to kind of go in tandem with it and have the UC1. If I did the same thing, I'll just show you quickly. So that automatically updates any channel that I go to. If you know it's 47, 46, 50, and it opens up the channel. If I changed all this to console 1, I've got this track. I've got these tracks now, and it's basically I'm in the same position where I'm in plugin. I've gone to plugin 5, and now I'm on kick out on channel 23. Now, if this was a UC1, that would mean that that channel now has been automatically selected, and it's not on console 1. So what I'd love to see eventually happen is if I press select on here and loaded up the plugin for acoustic, that would mean that would come up, and which is going to be somewhere here. That might even be a plot. So acoustic 1556. I'll select there. Like, it would have been nice, like if I'm now on channel 60, that this would automatically get updated and like pressed automatically selecting. So It's a bit of a shame. It's a bit mad that like the UC one will be able to follow that, but the console one doesn't, and that's something to do with limitation with console one where they haven't got. If you open a plugin, it doesn't automatically update on here. So Softtube, sort it out for me, please. For me, I bought this because I'm quite hands-on. I came from like a live sound situation originally and then got into the studio afterwards. So I'm using this as a workflow thing and it saved me tons of time already. And I've already mentioned about, I haven't bought this to impress anyone. I haven't bought this to try and get people to come into the studio. It's purely for me and actually my workflow. If I'm saving like an hour a day, always about making my things myself easier. Control surfaces aren't for everyone. Completely understand that. If you were thinking about buying it, I would recommend doing a trial and seeing if you could rent one or if you can do one on the lease or something, just to see if it works for your workflow or if you've got a setup that's so complicated or something that's not quite right for you. Let me know what you guys think. How are you using yours? Is there any like cool shortcuts that you guys are using? I'd love to hear, and I'd love to see if there's anything that you like want to know or anything that you're not sure about. Let me know. As I said, I've probably gone in loads of detail. I've only actually looked at Pro Tools. For my main issue at the moment is it's not incorporating the Sigma. I really hope in the future that like Sigma and the Delta control stuff, if that kind of came in, that would be really useful as well. I'd love to be able to just control like the Sigma and stuff from here and have it on a fader or like a level rather than having to buy a third-party system to be able to use it. But let me know what you guys think. Love to hear from you, and I'll see you all again in the next video. Nice one, guys.